When I was living as a ward in the Prime Minister's estate, I was set up. I spent one drug-fueled night with the family's eldest son, Lucian, ruining my reputation. Forced by family honor, he married me. I was his official wife in name, but in reality, I was treated worse than a lowly mistress. He despised me, humiliating me endlessly in the inner courtyard. He even brainwashed my own children, teaching them to view their frivolous mother as an absolute disgrace. That was until I was reborn. Waking up on the very night I was drugged. I violently yanked a silver hairpin from my hair, driving it deep into my own palm. The pain gave me a moment of clarity. Shoving away a red-eyed Lucian, I stumbled out the door and threw myself straight into the freezing pond outside. Hey everyone, it's Vera. Imagine waking up the night you're drugged and about to be ruined, then stabbing yourself to stay clear-headed, fleeing to a freezing pond to drown, rather than fall into a life of torment. That's Jiangwan's story. The early spring water was bone-chilling, piercing my skin like 1,000 icy needles. But the moment the water flooded my lungs, the burning heat of the aphrodisiac was finally suppressed. I didn't know how to swim, but I would rather drown clean in this pond of dead lotus leaves than ever marry him again. I closed my eyes, letting my soaked dress drag me down. I stopped struggling. Better to die pure today than endure 20 years of captivity and torment. Orphaned at a young age, I was taken in by the wealthy Liu family with my meager inheritance. I walked on eggshells in that massive, suffocating household. My grandmother played the doting matriarch, and my cousins maintained a facade of politeness. Only Lu Xiuan made no secret of his disgust for me. He was righteous, a perfect gentleman of the capital, completely untouched by lust. But I was born with a face meant for sin, a striking beauty, a slender waist, and eyes that seemed to flirt even when I wasn't smiling. To him, I was a natural-born seductress, a walking disaster. He avoided me like the plague. Today was my grandmother's 60th birthday. In my past life, someone had spiked my fruit wine with a heavy aphrodisiac. By the third round of drinks, my blood was boiling. A new maid half dragged my limp body to a room, shoved me inside, and the door locked behind me with a heavy click. I looked up to see Lu Xiuan. He'd had too much to drink. His usually pristine eyes were dark, terrifyingly clouded with lust. "Cousin," my voice trembled. What followed became my lifelong nightmare. He tore away his gentlemanly facade and pushed me to the brink. Then, a servant coincidentally burst in, followed by my grandmother, and a crowd of guests whispering in disgust. My reputation died that day. "I will marry you," he said afterward, leisurely slipping on his pristine white robe. He looked at me with absolute revulsion. "But I will never let you live in peace, Jiangwan," I cried, trying to explain that I was set up too. He simply brushed my hand away, leaving me with a cold, absolute verdict. "You are just an orphan leeching off the Liu family. You crave our power so much, you resorted to this dirty trick. You disgust me." Because I looked like a temptress, he was convinced I was a scheming social climber trying to trap him. The pond water was freezing. My memories and consciousness began to fade. Just as I thought it was finally over, a strong, bony hand clamped onto my wrist. With a massive pull, I was hauled violently onto the shore. Cough, cough. I violently choked up water, tasting blood as I collapsed on the cold bricks. The banquet guests had heard the commotion and gathered around with lanterns. A gust of wind hit me, and I shivered. My thin spring dress was drenched, clinging transparently to my skin. I wrapped my arms around myself, ducking my head in humiliation. Was I doomed to lose my reputation in this life too? "What the hell are you looking at?" A lazy yet bone-chilling voice drawled from above me. The next sentence dripped with pure, murderous intent. "Whoever dares to take another look, I'll gouge your eyes out right now." Instantly, a heavy cloak smelling of sharp sandalwood and faint blood engulfed me, covering me completely. "Are your legs broken?" he asked, speaking to me this time. "If not, stand up." I peeked through the gap in the cloak. My savior was a tall young man in a dark red, gold-embroidered robe. He had a face so breathtaking it bordered on demonic, but his eyes were filled with an untamed, icy arrogance. I tried to stand, but the after-effects of the drug made my legs give out. The young man clicked his tongue in annoyance, but instead of leaving, he casually shifted a half-step, acting as an impenetrable wall between me and the prying eyes of the crowd. The crowd suddenly parted. My grandmother hurried over, leaning on her cane. Seeing the scene, her face turned pale, but she forced a polite smile. "Forgive our poor hospitality for startling you, Lord Jing'an. We have made a fool of ourselves." I froze. Lord Jing'an Shaoqi Ivrion in the Empire knew that name. Inheriting his title as a teenager, he had ruthlessly defended the northern borders for 3 years. He was an unpredictable, bloodthirsty general, the capital's resident Grim Reaper. Rumor had it that he once attended a rival matriarch's birthday. While others brought gold and jade, he brought a black wooden box inside. Was the bleached skull of an enemy general. The old lady fainted on the spot. I slipped and fell. "Forgive me for disrupting the banquet, grandmother," I said hoarsely, clutching the cloak. I looked up at the boy in red. "Thank you for saving me, my lord." Shaoqi looked down at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Don't mention it." He leaned in, whispering so quietly only I could hear. "Next time you want to die, find a quiet place. You are dirtying my eyes." I caught a high fever from the freezing water. In my fever dreams, I was drowning again, surrounded by mocking faces. When I finally woke up, sunlight was pouring through the window. "Miss, you are finally awake," my maid Banksia cried, wiping my face with a warm towel. "You had a terrible fever all night." I blinked, feeling the warmth of the sun. I had survived the night. No public humiliation, no forced marriage. Just then, Banksia leaned in and whispered, "Miss, after you fell into the pond, a massive scandal broke out in the front courtyard. The eldest young master got drunk and almost ruined a maid in his study." The maid's name was Chu Sui. She was a senior servant due to be freed in 2 weeks to marry her carpenter Fianc Fei. Chu Sui fought back, cracked her head, and alerted the older servants, saving her innocence. But when the eldest young master sobered up, he pointed at her and called her a shameless hussy who deliberately seduced him. He said if she hadn't used her feminine wiles, a noble scholar like him would never do such a thing. Shameless hussy. Hearing those words, I let out a long breath, a bitter irony washing over me. In our past life, Lu Shiyuan had pointed his finger at me and said the exact same thing. After he was forced to marry me, he never bothered for privacy. He made the night duty maids stand right outside the bed curtains. Sometimes, he even ordered the room brightly lit, ensuring my humiliation had nowhere to hide. "Why play the virgin?" he would whisper in my ear like a viper. "A shameless woman who schemed her way into my bed knows how to be embarrassed." When my son and daughter grew up, he took them away, claiming my frivolous nature would corrupt them. I died alone on a mid-autumn night. My son had just topped the imperial exams, and my daughter had married well. The front courtyard was hosting a massive banquet while I was rotting away in a run-down annex. My son had visited, standing 3 steps away with a cold look. "Father told me to check on you. He never divorced you, preserving your status as an official wife. He has done more than enough. Stop complaining." My daughter came next, covering her nose with a handkerchief like the smell of my medicine offended her. "Mother, my husband's family is very traditional. Please be mindful of your past scandals. Don't make things difficult for him." I was so tired. I remembered my parents who died when I was 9. My father used to put me on his shoulders and say, "When our Awan grows up, she'll marry the best man in the world, and he'll cherish her forever." "But Mom, Dad, Awan's life has been so hard." A violent knock shattered my memories. The door flew open. Lu Shiyuan stormed in. He wore his pristine white robes, but his usually calm, superior eyes were bloodshot and furious. Jiangwan! He hissed through gritted teeth, standing over my bed. It was you who barged into my study last night, wasn't it? I looked at him, genuinely puzzled. So, if it had been me instead of Q Sui, he could have justifiably blamed the whole thing on my seduction. I met his gaze, my voice eerily calm. Yes. Someone spiked my drink. You were drunk, your eyes were red, and you tried to act like a beast. Lu Shiyuan stiffened, his jaw tightly clenched. I was terrified. I mocked softly. I'd rather die than let you touch me. So I ran for my life and jumped into the freezing pond. Dead silence filled the room. Lu Shiyuan's Adam's apple bobbed. Then, as if he'd just heard a hilarious joke, he laughed. Even in this life, he didn't believe me. Drugged, rather die than let me touch you. He sneered, looking down at me. Jiangwan, you are overplaying your hand. You think playing hard to get will actually make me respect you? Chu Sui was going to be banished to a remote mountain farm. The matriarch was furious and wanted to make an example of her. When I dragged my sick body to the main hall, Chu Sui was bleeding on the stone floor, crying, "Mercy, madam. I swear I didn't seduce him. I was just delivering hangover soup." My grandmother sat in her armchair, fingering her prayer beads, face dark. The entire extended family was there, watching in silence. Seeing me enter, pale and sickly, my grandmother frowned. "Awan, you are still sick. What are you doing here?" I brushed past the servants and stood directly in front of Chu Sui, shielding her from their disgusted stares. "Grandmother, I am here to clear Chu Sui's name." Ignoring their shocked faces, I told them exactly what happened to me last night. How I was drugged, how I was nearly assaulted in the study, and how I chose to jump into the pond to escape. Dead silence. Even my grandmother stopped counting her beads. Before Lu Shiyuan could speak, his mother jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Absurd! Impossible! Shiyuan is a perfect, disciplined scholar. It was this slut who wanted to climb into his bed." She turned her glare to me. "If you knew how to run away, why didn't she clearly? She wanted to take advantage of him. And now that she is caught, she dragged you here to lie for her." I knew exactly how Chu Sui felt. In my past life, I was kneeling in that exact spot, with everyone calling me a whore. I took a deep breath and stared right into his mother's eyes. "You ask why she didn't run. I have a question for you. Why is it that whenever a scandal happens, the woman is always the one at fault? I got drugged and almost raped, and it is because I am a flirt. Chu Sui delivers soup and gets attacked. And she is a seductress. We both nearly died. Yet, not a single person in this room has asked, who drugged me and who couldn't control his own animalistic urges in that study?" I turned and locked eyes with Lu Shiyuan, whose pupils shrank. "Cousin, you read so many holy books. Do they teach you to blame your own beastly actions on defenseless women?" My grandmother exploded in anger. Lu Shiyuan was about to take his imperial exams. His reputation couldn't have a single blemish. She ordered the doors closed and had Lu Shiyuan brutally beaten with 30 strikes of the cane. She gave Chu Sui 50 taels of silver and smuggled her out of the manor to marry her carpenter. The whole incident was completely covered up. As for me, the girl who nearly ripped off the Lu family's hypocritical mask, I was sent away to Xian Temple in the mountains to rest. Leaving that suffocating house was exactly what I wanted. Late spring brought heavy rain. The temple was empty. One evening, I was kneeling in the side hall copying scriptures. The wind howled, blowing the wooden window open. I put down my brush and stepped forward to close it, when a freezing, sharp blade pressed tightly against my throat. "Don't make a sound!" A hoarse, low voice whispered in my ear, smelling heavily of blood. The dagger gleamed in the candlelight. One twitch of his wrist, and I'd be joining my parents. Fortunately, I actually recognized my attacker instead of screaming. I sighed. "Do you have to be so dramatic every time we meet, my lord?" The man froze. He lowered the dagger slightly. "It is you?" I stared at the razor-sharp blade, not daring to move. "Yeah, what a twisted fate we share." Xiaoqi scoffed and slowly withdrew the knife. I turned around. His dark red robes were completely soaked in dark purplish blood. He was pale as a ghost. Yet he still stood perfectly straight, maintaining that lazy, arrogant posture. Miss Jiang. He chuckled, a trail of blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. Save a life? Before I could answer, the temple doors were kicked open. A group of masked assassins barged in. The leader glared at me. Who are you? I instantly dropped to the floor, eyes wide with terror, trembling like a leaf. I am just a noblewoman from the Lu family, praying here. Please spare me. The assassin pointed his sword at me. Did you see a heavily injured man in red come through here? My heart pounded, but I forced tears into my eyes, shaking my head frantically. Two assassins started walking toward the curtained area behind the Buddha statue, where Xiaoqi was hiding. I bit my lip, faked a slip, and knocked a heavy bronze incense burner off the table with a massive crash. Ash flew everywhere. The assassins whipped around. I pointed a shaky finger at the open window. I think I saw a red shadow jump out the window, heading toward the woods. Seeing that I was just a weak, terrified girl, they didn't waste time. They vaulted out the window into the rain. Once they were gone, I collapsed onto the floor, completely drenched in cold sweat. Aitsuka's soft mocking sound came from behind the statue. Xiaoqi walked out, clutching his wound. You are a pretty good actor, Miss Jiang. A shame you are not on stage in the capital. I pulled myself up. And here I thought you were going to praise me for being brave and clever. Xiaoqi laughed, but the movement tore at the deep wound on his shoulder. He groaned and slid down against the wall. I grabbed my medical kit. My father was a famous doctor in the south. I knew how to handle this. I cut away his clothes and poured strong liquor straight onto his wound. The fearless Grim Reaper hissed in pain, breaking into a cold sweat. Damn it, gentler. He gritted his teeth. Are you trying to save me or take revenge? I didn't slow down. Revenge. When you survive, you can come take yours. He stared at the top of my head. Zhangwan, you've got some serious nerve. The storm raged outside. The temple smelled of sandalwood and blood. Xiaoqi had heard the rumors. People said the Lu family's ward was a shameless, loose woman. But here she was, calmly and meticulously stitching up the capital's deadliest killer. People are so blind, he thought. They see the skin, but never the soul. Feeling his intense gaze, I looked up. What is it, my lord? Did I hurt you? He violently snapped his head away. In the dim light, the tips of his ears turned a suspicious shade of red. No, he muttered. Your bandaging is just ugly. I stayed at the temple for a month. When I returned to the Lu Manor, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Me, cousin, Lu Wangqing, was kneeling in the main hall. They had found out who drugged me. It was her servant. And all because a royal prince had looked at me twice during a spring banquet. But my grandmother merely gave her a slap on the wrist, grounding her. Then she turned to me, subtly warning me to swallow my grievances for the sake of the family's reputation. Lu Wangqing wasn't sorry at all. She pointed at me and screamed. If she didn't walk around parading that seductive face of hers, the prince wouldn't have looked. It is her fault for being a slut. Shut up. Lu Shiyuan strode into the hall, his face dark. Who taught you to speak so viciously about your own cousin? Lu Wangqing sneered. You are protecting her, brother? Everyone in the capital knows Lord Jing'an pulled her out of that pond. She is ruined. What decent family would ever take her as a legitimate wife now? The hall went dead silent. Lu Shiyuan stood tall, looking at me with what he probably thought was deep, merciful affection. Slowly, he declared, I am willing to marry her as my primary wife. Everyone gasped. I looked at his self-righteous face, feeling nothing but pure nausea. I smiled mockingly. Cousin, what a massive favor, but when did I ever say I wanted to marry you? Just as they thought I had lost my mind for rejecting the Prime Minister's heir, the head maid of the Princess Royal's estate walked through the doors. Her Highness the Princess Royal invites Miss Jiang to her estate for a lotus banquet. She is very fond of Miss Jiang's elegance and grace. It was a resounding slap in the face to the Liu family. The Princess Royal was the Emperor's sister. Her favor was something the Liu family couldn't buy with all their gold. At the banquet, several noble girls hid behind their fans, whispering nasty rumors about my incident at the pond. But the Princess Royal smiled and pulled me to sit beside her. Shaoqi told me he owed you a favor, and insisted I host this little gathering for you. Right on cue, Shaoqi strolled in. He wore a ridiculously flashy crimson and gold robe, looking like absolute royalty. He lazily scanned the whispering girls with an oppressive glare. Why are you all hiding your faces now? You weren't shy a minute ago? I guess when you're born too ugly to match Miss Jiang's looks, you have to resort to acting ugly with your words. The girls turned pale and shut their mouths. Shaoqi scoffed and sat down right next to me like a bodyguard. He lazily started peeling lotus seeds. He pushed a small dish of perfectly peeled seeds toward me. I've heard about the mess at the Liu Manor. Do they really think nobody in this city can touch them? I popped a seed into my mouth and frowned. It is bitter. He glanced at me. You know what bitter is. He looked away toward the lake, his voice softening. I don't just butt into anyone's business, Zhang Wan. After that banquet, two strange things happened at the Liu Manor. First, Lu Wanqing broke out in a hideous, incredibly itchy rash that ruined her prized face. Second, Lu Shiyuan accidentally fell into the lake while reading. He developed a high fever, deliriously crying out for his wife. The whole manor was in chaos, but nobody knew about the third strange occurrence. A marquee had started growing on the wall of my courtyard. He showed up constantly. One day he wore crimson, the next sapphire blue, then jade green, strutting on my wall like a peacock looking for a mate. Did you do that to my cousins? I asked through the window. Shaoqi tossed an apple in the air, playing innocent. There are so many people in the capital. Why would I target them? Maybe they should reflect on their own bad karma. I rested my chin on my hands. There are so many wealthy estates in the capital. Why are you only climbing my wall? Should I reflect on my karma too? He froze, opening his mouth to shoot back, but suddenly clutched his nose. Blood seeped through his fingers. The terrifying, undefeated general of the north had a nosebleed. He slowly slid down behind the wall out of sight. A moment later, his head popped back up. The weather is too dry, he deadpanned. I smiled. The pomegranate trees in the courtyard were in full bloom. I stood on my tiptoes, snapped off a vibrant red branch, and handed it to the boy on the wall. Shaoqi, will you marry me? Thud. The branch sat alone on the wall. He had fallen straight backward. There was a frantic scrambling sound from the other side, followed by his desperate, panicked voice, like he was terrified I'd take it back. Yes, you said it. A grand carriage, an official procession. I am marrying you. I nodded gently, tears pricking my eyes. Okay. At that very moment, Lu Shiyuan was trapped in a long, agonizing dream. He dreamed of our past life. He saw his own possessive insanity, how he abused and trapped me. He saw me die. He saw his own body shutting down from the poison I had slowly fed him. Before he died in the dream, he saw me standing over him in a white dress like a vengeful ghost. You ruined my life. Why should you get to live? Go to hell, Lu Shiyuan. Awan! Lu Shiyuan jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. He remembered. He remembered everything. He had wronged me for a lifetime, and he had tortured me for a lifetime. A twisted mix of joy and regret filled him. He stumbled out of bed. He needed to see me. He was going to make it right this time. Where are you going, young master? A terrified maid asked. Miss Jiang had her wedding 10 days ago. Who did she marry? Lord Jing'an. Lu Shiyuan violently coughed up a mouthful of blood, collapsing to the floor, his eyes wide with utter madness. After we married, Shaoqi voluntarily surrendered half his military power to the emperor. taking me away from the capital's politics to the watery landscapes of the south. I apprenticed under my late father's colleague and opened a medical clinic 3 years later. Xiaoqi spoiled me relentlessly, constantly buying me bright, beautiful clothes, wanting to give me the best of everything. "Isn't this too flashy?" I asked, looking at my vibrant reflection in the mirror. He hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Never. I married a goddess, and I want the whole world to know. A wan with me, you can always shine as bright as you want." In my past life, I was forced to wither away in the dark. In this life, someone finally planted me in the sun. But our peace shattered in the winter of our 4th year. Xiaoqi was called up north by imperial decree to crush a rebellion. 3 months after he left, heavily armed royal guards kicked down the doors of my clinic. Leading them was a man in the deep purple robes of the prime minister. It was Lu Shiyuan. "You've lost weight, Awan," he said, his eyes filled with a sickening obsession. "The south doesn't suit you. Come back to the capital with me. Lord Jing'an has committed treason. By the emperor's orders, his family is to be arrested." He didn't throw me in prison. He chained me inside a heavily guarded suburban estate. The bedroom was decorated exactly like our bridal chamber from my past life. Late one night, he stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. "I never married," he whispered with a psychotic smile. "In our past life, I wronged you, and you poisoned me. We're even in this life. I'll treat you perfectly. We can start over." I looked at him like he was a monster. "Number Lu Shiyuan, you make me sick to my stomach." A tear slipped from his bloodshot eye, but he threw his head back and laughed maniacally. "Fine, hate me, Awan, because for the rest of this life, and the next, you will always be mine." As he stepped closer, the smell of his cologne and alcohol hit me. My stomach violently churned. I turned away and gagged. The doctor they brought in trembled on his knees. "Congratulations, Prime Minister, the madam is nearly 2 months pregnant." The room went dead silent. Lu Shiyuan stared at my flat stomach. Then he laughed, a cold, deranged sound. "It doesn't matter. I am marrying you on the 15th of next month. As for this bastard, he'll take my last name. I will be his father, and he will never know who his real father was. Make Xiaoqi's child call this psychopath father." I closed my eyes, acting as if the fight had finally left me. Seeing my submission, he slightly relaxed the guards around me over the next 2 weeks. That was exactly what I needed. A gray pigeon had already landed on my windowsill days ago. It was from the Princess Royal. The letter confirmed 3 things. 1. Xiaoqi was victorious and very much alive. The treason charge was Lu Shiyuan's setup. 2. The emperor had long wanted to execute the overly powerful Lu family. 3. The concrete evidence of Lu Shiyuan's own treason was hidden right here in this very estate, because he believed that wherever I was the safest place on earth. On the day Lu Shiyuan forced me to marry him, it was snowing. The courtyard was decorated in red, and I had already retrieved the treasonous letters, using my memories of his habits from our past life, and handed them to Xiaoqi's shadow guards. At midnight, Lu Shiyuan pushed open the bedroom door, wearing red wedding robes. He was shaking with excitement as he reached for my veil. "Awan, I finally made you my wife." The exact moment he lifted the veil and dropped his guard, I pulled the black iron dagger Xiaoqi had given me from my sleeve. Without a shred of hesitation, I plunged it straight into his chest. I gripped the handle, leaning into his ear like a demon crawling out of hell. "Where did you get the confidence to think I'd ever start over with you? I didn't want to marry you in my past life, and in this life, I would gladly drink your blood." Lu Shiyuan shuddered violently. He looked down in pure disbelief at the blood blossoming across his wedding robes. "So, your obedience? It was all fake." I watched him fall to his knees, every single second of it. My words acted like a blunt knife, shredding his psychotic delusions of love. He violently coughed up black blood, clutching his chest, the life draining from his eyes. Crash! The courtyard doors were kicked off their hinges, Freezing wind and snow blasted into the room. Shao-Chi, clad in silver armor, stormed in with the royal guards like an avenging god. He stepped right over Lu Xiuan's bleeding body, pulled me tightly into his arms, his voice trembling. "I am back, Awan. Don't be afraid." I dropped the bloody dagger, resting my chin on his cold armored shoulder. I looked down at Lu Xiuan gasping on the floor. "Husband," I tattled softly. "He coveted me." Shao-Chi's lethal, beautiful eyes locked onto Lu Xiuan. "Throw him in the dungeon." The storm that hit the capital wiped out the Lu family entirely. They were executed for treason. Given his grandfather's past service, the emperor granted Lu Xiuan the mercy of poisoned wine. I heard that when he died, he refused to close his eyes, tightly gripping a handkerchief he had stolen from my courtyard. But none of that mattered to me anymore. The following spring, back in the lush south, my daughter was born. Shao-Chi ignored the midwives and forced his way into the delivery room. When the baby cried, the ruthless general who had slaughtered thousands cried even louder than she did. At sunset, the wind chimes outside my clinic tinkled. I was sorting herbs when my final patient of the day walked in. I didn't even need to look up. "Where does it hurt?" I asked, writing in my ledger. Shao-Chi lazily slumped over my desk, giving me absolute puppy dog eyes. "My heart aches when I don't see my wife for a single day. Dr. Jiang, you wouldn't let me die of a broken heart, would you?" The older women waiting for their prescriptions chuckled. I felt my face heat up and shot him a glare. In my arms, our baby girl giggled, reaching out with chubby hands to grab her father's hair. I picked up my brush and carefully wrote down a single medicinal herb on the prescription pad, sliding it over to him. Dang Gui, Angelica root. A cure for the heart, a word that literally translates to ought to return home, day and night, to your side, forever. What captivated me most about this story isn't just the harrowing escape or the brutal betrayal. It's the quiet rebirth amid despair. Jiang Wan was trapped in a gilded prison, forced into marriage with Lu Xiuan, a man who hated her, humiliated her, and poisoned her children's minds against her. She was nothing but a beautiful nuisance to him, punished and neglected throughout her life. But in this new chance, after waking with clear eyes amid the ice-cold spring water, she refused to be the shattered woman she once was. Enter Shao-Chi, the Grim Reaper of the North, ruthless, legendary, and the kind of man who walks into a rival's birthday carrying the enemy's skull like a trophy. He saves her not with words or grand gestures, but with presence, shielding her from prying eyes and taking on the night's chaos like a sentinel. Their chemistry sizzles quietly, banter sharp as a blade, teasing in whispers, laughter breaking through wounds. He's arrogant, untamed, but fiercely loyal beneath it all. What I loved was how Wan didn't enter this new life with wide-eyed hope, but fierce caution. When the scandal about her drugged night breaks, Lu Xiuan sweeps in to protect her reputation by forcing marriage. Yet his love is venomous, his acceptance a cage. The moment she steps up to defend the maid Chu Sui against the family's cruelty is when you see her steel emerge. She won't be a victim again. She confronts the hypocrisy head-on. Who drugged me? Who couldn't control himself? She refuses to be the woman who silently endures disgrace. And Shao-Chi, the man who could command armies, now chooses to protect her, stand by her side together. They rewrite the rules. The climax when Lu Xiuan drunkenly confesses to the betrayal and tries to start over, only for Wan to pierce through the act and stab him with a dagger gifted by Shao Qias, both brutal and deeply satisfying. It's not just revenge, it's reclaiming agency. Later, the peace they find is tender. The ruthless general becomes a doting father, cherishing their children, and Jiang Wan blossoms into a healer and survivor. This story isn't about fairy tale happy endings. It's about survival, love forged in fire, and the quiet power in standing tall amidst ruin. Vera's book club poll: which moment moved you most? The drowning knight choosing the cold, icy pond over a lifetime of torment. The Grim Reapers save a ruthless general, shielding a fading beauty from the world's cruelty. See defending the maid, a whispered plea transforming into a bold stand against hypocrisy. The betrayer's last breath stabbing the man who ruined her life as he tries to rewrite their past. Eeling hands from broken survivor to healer, wielding her own power in a gentle way. Family forged in fire, building a future with a fierce, flawed man who loves fiercely in return. Drop your pick. And seriously, how many drama queens wish their first act was a cold plunge to shock their systems into clarity? Zhang Wan's pain was deep, but I love that she treated survival like an art.